When most people think of spaghetti westerns, their minds go straight to Clint Eastwood, Ennio Morricone, and the legendary three-way shootout. But beneath the iconic scenes lie forgotten gems, duels buried under decades of dust, but no less explosive. These are the moments that slipped through the cracks, yet still send chills down your spine. Get ready to rediscover 20 of the most underrated spaghetti western duels ever captured on celluloid. Face to Face, Professor vs. Bandit Showdown. In Sergio Solima's intellectual western Face to Face, the duel between Professor Brad Fletcher and outlaw Solomon Bennett is unlike anything you'd expect from a shootout. It's not just bullets being exchanged, it's ideals. The former academic, played by Gian Maria Volonté, finds himself corrupted by the very outlaw he once studied. The final standoff comes not from years of rivalry, but a painful realization that they've traded places morally. The setting is barren, the music quiet, until a single gunshot breaks the silence. It's a tragic, soul-crushing duel that ends with no winner, only disillusionment. Often overshadowed by flashier films, this scene's emotional weight and psychological depth mark it as one of the most unique duels in spaghetti western history. There's no fancy twirling of guns or orchestrated tension, just two men realizing they've become what they once hated. It's a cerebral, haunting moment that lingers far beyond the final frame. Death Rides a Horse, Bill versus the Betrayer. John Philip Law's Bill finally confronts one of the men who destroyed his family in a haunting, wind-swept desert. Unlike typical revenge scenes, this duel is deeply personal. It's not just vengeance, it's reckoning. The way the camera captures the twitch in Bill's eye, the cut of his jaw, the moment before he fires, every second drips with emotional intensity. With Lee Van Cleef watching silently nearby, this isn't just a confrontation, it's a moral crossroads. Does revenge restore the past or bury it further? The duel unfolds slowly, with Ennio Morricone's music piercing through the silence like a warning. When the gun goes off, it's more than a death, it's the end of a life consumed by vengeance. This moment is often overlooked in favor of bigger scenes from the film, but its raw psychological weight and masterful execution deserve a second look. It's one of the most heartfelt and visually poetic duels of the genre. Kyoma, Brother versus Brother. In Enzo G. Castellari's eerie and almost mythological Kyoma, the final duel between Kyoma and his half-brothers isn't just a shootout, it's an ancient tragedy retold in a Western setting. The apocalyptic town setting, the ghostly narration, and the haunting ballad in the background all elevate this into something deeply operatic. Kyoma, a half-Indian gunslinger cast out by his own family, returns not to reclaim land or gold, but to cleanse a rotting world. The duel takes place in slow-motion chaos, rain pouring, pain echoing in every bullet. Each brother represents a different vice, greed, pride, power, and as Kyoma faces them, it feels like a spiritual cleansing. Forgotten amidst more commercially successful spaghetti westerns, this duel is a cinematic poem about betrayal, blood, and rebirth. The raw emotion, visual symbolism, and the sense of fate make it one of the most soul-stirring shootouts you've likely never seen. A Bullet for the General, Companions Turned Killers. Set during the Mexican Revolution, this film is often remembered for its political themes rather than its powerful duel. But when the revolutionary El Chuncho discovers his comrade Bill Tate is a cold-blooded assassin, the final shootout becomes a heart-wrenching betrayal. The two once rode side by side, laughed, and killed together. Now, under a blazing sun, they stand apart. Ideals shattered, illusions broken. What follows is not just a shootout, but a sobering realization of how ideology and money twist human bonds. The pacing is slow, deliberate, and heavy with sadness. The moment Bill meets his fate, it's not triumphant, it's quiet, even mournful. This duel is the climax of friendship poisoned by imperialism and greed. It may not have the theatrical flair of other duels, but its emotional punch hits even harder. a truly underrated moment in spaghetti western cinema. Run, man, run, Cuchillo's quick draw in the desert. Tomas Million's Cuchillo isn't your typical gunslinger. He's a fast-talking, knife-throwing peasant caught up in revolutionary politics. But don't let the humor fool you. When he's cornered in the desert by a hired killer, Cuchillo shows a cunning rarely seen in spaghetti western duels. What makes this scene special is its tension. There's no music, just the whispering wind and the buzzing of flies. The killer's shadow stretches across the sand, gun in hand. But Cuchillo doesn't panic. He plays dumb, fakes fear, and then, with lightning speed, draws his knife and brings him down. It's a moment that flips the traditional Western duel on its head. Instead of honor, it's trickery. Instead of a standoff, it's a bait and switch. This scene proves that duels aren't just about gunpowder, they're about wit, survival, and instinct. And Cuchillo's triumph, though often forgotten, deserves to be studied as one of the genre's smartest, most subversive duels. The Big Gun Down, Corbett versus Cuchillo in the cane fields. Lee Van Cleef's Corbett, a relentless bounty hunter, chases the elusive Cuchillo through thick, swaying cane fields. This isn't your typical dusty showdown on Main Street. It's a haunting, sweat-drenched cat-and-mouse game where every rustle could be a fatal shot. The duel breaks all traditional rules. Instead of honor and face-to-face tension, it's about survival in a labyrinth of shadows and secrets. Morricone's music rises and falls with the tension, blending symphony with heartbeat. What makes this duel so underrated is its primal intimacy. Two men locked in a hunter-prey dynamic, but whose roles subtly switch with each passing moment. When the moment of truth finally comes, it's quiet, understated, but heavy with realization. Corbett begins to doubt the justice of the hunt, and the duel becomes an internal war as much as a physical one. Often overlooked for its unusual setting and slower pace, this is a masterclass in suspense and moral complexity. Companeros, Yodloff versus the wooden-handed John. In Sergio Corbucci's politically charged Companeros, the duel between Swedish arms dealer Yodloff Peterson and the eerie, wooden-handed John is a cinematic fever dream. Jack Palance plays John with a sinister calm, always stroking his pet falcon, delivering menace with a smirk. Their final standoff in a grimy desert town is less about reflexes and more about sheer will. Yodloff, a charming rogue, suddenly finds himself up against a ghost from his past. The duel is unsettling, dragged out by Palance's theatrical stillness and the bizarre calmness in the air. The atmosphere is thick, more psychological than explosive. And when it ends, it's not with a bang, but with a twisted sense of satisfaction. This duel is a hidden gem, ignored by mainstream lists, but unforgettable once witnessed. The surreal tension, matched with brilliant character dynamics, make it one of the weirdest and most wickedly underrated standoffs in the genre. Django Coffin Duel in the Cemetery. Franco Nero's iconic Django is nearly crippled, his hands shattered by sadistic enemies. And yet, crawling through the mud of a cemetery, dragging a coffin behind him, he faces down Major Jackson and his men. It's less a duel than a miracle of willpower. Using the custom machine gun hidden in his coffin, Django turns certain death into vengeance. What's remarkable isn't just the weapon, it's the emotional context. Django, broken and bleeding, rises like a phoenix from the grave, literally shooting down oppression. The duel's cinematography is grim and gothic, mud, tombstones, and blood splatter, a visual metaphor for Django's personal hell. The haunting silence before the bullets fly makes it even more chilling. While this scene has gained some cult love over the years, it remains criminally underrated for its subversive twist on the genre's typical duels. It's raw, grotesque, and unforgettable, an unholy mix of spaghetti grit and operatic redemption. If you meet Sartana, pray for your death. Sartana versus 5 Killers. Johnny Garco's Sartana is part magician, part assassin. And in this often forgotten spaghetti western, he walks into a trap set by 5 merciless killers. But the duel that follows is less about firepower and more about finesse. In a dusty saloon lit only by lanterns, Sartana calculates every move. He doesn't just shoot, he manipulates. Using hidden pistols, mirrors, and sleight of hand, Sartana outsmarts each killer like a deadly chess master. The duel is stylish, theatrical, and absurdly clever. Every shot is choreographed like a stage performance, and the tension is thick with unpredictability. What makes it so underrated is its sheer inventiveness, blending suspense, dark comedy, and tactical genius. This isn't just a fight, it's a puzzle with deadly stakes. Sartana's cool demeanor and inventive tactics redefined what a Western duel could be, yet it's rarely mentioned in genre retrospectives. It's time that changed. The Great Silence. Silence versus Loco. Snow blankets the mountains, no dusty plains, no deserts, just icy death. In Corbucci's bleak masterpiece, mute gunslinger Silence faces off against the ruthless bounty hunter Loco. The duel takes place in a wintry town square where the white silence feels suffocating. And when it finally erupts, it doesn't go how anyone expects. Spoiler alert, the hero doesn't win. In a shocking twist, Silence is gunned down without mercy, as are innocent townspeople. It's a brutal subversion of the Western myth, where good doesn't always triumph. The duel is devastating in its silence and realism. Morricone's haunting score lingers like a funeral dirge. Forgotten for years due to its downbeat ending, The Great Silence delivers one of the most emotionally shattering duels in Western cinema. It's a cry against violence and capitalism masquerading as law, and it cuts deep. Texas Adios, Bert Sullivan versus Cisco Delgado. While Texas Adios is often dismissed as a lesser spaghetti western, it holds one of the most poetic and overlooked duels in the genre. Franco Nero plays Texas Sheriff Bert Sullivan, who travels to Mexico seeking revenge against the warlord who killed his father, Cisco Delgado. But when the final confrontation arrives, it's not filled with rage or gunslinger bravado. Instead, it's a moment drenched in truth and brotherhood. Sullivan discovers that Delgado is not just his father's killer, he's also his long-lost brother. The revelation cracks open their humanity. The duel that follows isn't fought with fury, but with emotional restraint. It's staged in an open field, the wind carrying away the last words of men who could have shared a life. Sullivan wins, but there's no joy, only sorrow. The framing, the tension, the tragic irony. Everything about this scene speaks to the moral complexities often missing in more bombastic westerns. This deeply personal showdown deserves more attention for its emotional richness and its tragic meditation on blood ties and revenge. Cemetery Without Crosses. Maria's Revenge Duel. This French-Italian spaghetti western hybrid, directed by Robert Hossein, offers a duel that's more ghostly than gritty. When Maria loses her husband to a cold-blooded ambush by the Rogers family, she seeks revenge through silent gunslinger Manuel, a man who lives with his ghosts in a desolate shack near a cemetery. The duel that defines the film comes near the end, when Maria is finally faced with the man responsible for her pain. But the scene refuses to unfold in any predictable way. It's held in complete silence. No music, no theatrics, just the sound of boots scraping dirt and the ominous ticking of time. Maria draws the gun. There is hesitation. Manuel watches. The shot finally cracks, and the silence collapses. The brilliance of this duel lies in its restraint. The power is not in the gunfire, but in the emotional load behind it. Cemetery Without Crosses plays like a ghost story, and this duel is its final haunting whisper. It's not a scene of victory, but of emptiness, of vengeance that doesn't heal. This underrated moment blends tragedy and fatalism like few westerns ever dared. A Pistol for Ringo. Ringo's Garden Duel. Giuliano Gemma's Ringo isn't your typical hardened outlaw. He's slick, witty, and cunning. But don't let the charm fool you. In A Pistol for Ringo, his duel inside a lush garden courtyard is one of the most suspenseful and overlooked in the genre. The setting alone is striking: flowers in bloom, white marble, and fountains, a far cry from the dusty, sun-baked streets of most Western duels. But the elegance hides lethal intent. Ringo faces down a gang leader with a plan as stylish as it is lethal. He baits his enemy into a false sense of security, moving slowly, circling with polite conversation, then bang. A single bullet shatters the calm like a thunderclap in a church. What makes this duel underrated is its staging. Beauty clashing with brutality, civility masking imminent death. The tension simmers instead of boiling. Ringo's smile doesn't fade until the shot rings out. Then it's all business. It's one of the most ironic and visually rich duels in the genre, blending aristocratic grace with ruthless justice. And yet, it's rarely mentioned in spaghetti Western retrospectives, despite being one of the cleverest executions of the classic Western standoff. Chan? The Hellbenders. Jonathan versus Ben in the Dust. The Hellbenders, directed by Sergio Corbucci, is often remembered for its nihilistic tone and political undercurrents, but buried in its dust is a ferocious duel between Colonel Jonas and his own son, Ben. The entire film explores the breakdown of family loyalty and the futility of war, and this final duel brings that theme to its agonizing conclusion. Jonas is a Confederate fanatic trying to restart the Civil War, while Ben begins to see the moral decay in his father's quest. As their ideological rift widens, their emotional bond withers until nothing is left but a deadly choice. The duel is staged in a barren stretch of land, empty except for the weight of betrayal. The two stand, not as kin, but as enemies divided by blood and ideology. The moment is tense, quiet, broken only by the wind and a father's final plea. Ben doesn't hesitate. When he fires, it's not with triumph, it's with heartbreak. This duel deserves far more recognition for portraying how blind fanaticism tears even the most sacred bonds apart. It's personal, political, and profoundly painful. Blind Man. The duel you never see coming. Blind Man might sound like a gimmick, a blind gunslinger walking into duels, but don't be fooled. This Tony Anthony cult gem delivers one of the most inventive and unexpected duels in spaghetti Western history. The titular blindman, protecting 50 kidnapped women, faces off against a band of ruthless bandits. But he doesn't rely on sight. He uses sound, smell, instinct. In one particularly riveting scene, he senses a duel coming and walks straight into a trap. The audience expects him to be killed instantly, yet what follows is masterclass misdirection. As the gunman circles him, Blindman listens intently. A footstep, a click, a breath, and in one swift move, he fires. The bullet finds its mark. The attacker collapses in disbelief. It's not just luck, it's mastery. What makes this duel underrated isn't the flash, but the sheer inventiveness. It flips every expectation on its head. The audience holds its breath not out of excitement, but tension so thick it feels like a noose. The duel proves that in the spaghetti Western world, you don't need eyes to see the truth. You just need nerve, instinct, and timing. And that's unforgettable. Shoot the Living and Pray for the Dead. Dan Hogan versus John Webb. This slow-burn thriller, often overshadowed by louder titles, delivers one of the most methodical and psychologically rich duels in spaghetti Western history. Klaus Kinski plays Dan Hogan, a cold-blooded gang leader escorting gold across the border. But it's his unsettling showdown with the mysterious John Webb, a supposed ally with a hidden motive, that defines the film. Their duel doesn't take place in the open, but within the claustrophobic walls of an isolated inn, thick with distrust. As tension simmers, every glance, gesture, and unspoken word becomes a weapon. By the time guns are drawn, it's not about speed, it's about timing and manipulation. Webb doesn't just want revenge, he wants Hogan to know he's been outplayed. The final moment is devastating. A single shot, a gasp, and years of deception brought to an explosive end. The restraint of this duel, how it's built on psychological warfare rather than bravado, makes it one of the genre's most intelligent and underrated showdowns. Few films show how silence can be more terrifying than gunfire. This one makes every second count. Reququescant versus George Bellow Ferguson. In this deeply political and religiously symbolic film, Lou Castel plays Reququescant, a preacher-turned-avenger who seeks justice for the slaughter of Mexican peasants. The final duel with the aristocratic George Bellow Ferguson, played with icy calm by Mark Damon, is not just physical, it's philosophical. Taking place in a Baroque, candlelit hall adorned with crucifixes and opulence, the duel feels like a medieval trial by fire. Reququescant is morally torn. Violence contradicts his Christian values, yet inaction would mean allowing tyranny to thrive. Ferguson, on the other hand, believes in absolute control and racial supremacy. The standoff builds slowly, not with rage, but with spiritual dread. When Reququescant finally draws, it's not for vengeance, but for salvation. A single, deliberate shot ends Ferguson's life, but not without consequence. The aftermath is quiet, reflective, and filled with ambiguity. This scene, dripping with metaphor, is rarely cited among great duels, yet it might be the most ideologically charged showdown in the spaghetti western canon. It's not about who's faster, it's about who's right, and that makes it unforgettable. Teepa, Dr. Price versus Teepa. Teepa, starring Thomas Millian and Orson Welles, is a revolutionary western drenched in class conflict and rebellion. But buried within this tale of uprising is a hauntingly understated duel between the rebel Teepa and the English Dr. Price. The doctor isn't a gunslinger, he's a man twisted by personal grief, blaming Teepa for the death of the woman he loved. Their duel, which comes not at the film's climax, but unexpectedly midway, is fueled by emotion, not strategy. In a rare twist, the duel is more about obsession than justice. Teepa, charismatic and unrepentant, barely recognizes the pain he's caused. Price, on the other hand, seethes with quiet fury. As the moment builds, the camera lingers not on their guns, but their eyes, the recognition, the hatred, the futility. When the trigger is finally pulled, it's almost anticlimactic. Teepa lives, but something breaks in both men. This scene stands out because it rewrites the rules. The doctor is no match, but the duel is emotional, not martial. It's about grief's grip, not justice's weight. A duel often missed, but never forgotten by those who see it. Massacre Time, Tom versus Junior Scott. Lucio Fulci, better known for horror, crafted one of the most brutal spaghetti western duels in Massacre Time. Franco Nero stars as Tom Corbett, a man returning home to find his land stolen and his family humiliated. The villain? Junior Scott, a sadistic, giggling psychopath with a whip and a gun. The duel that erupts between them is cathartic and grotesque. Junior doesn't just want to kill, he wants to degrade. He mocks Tom, whips him in front of townspeople, and then offers him a gun just to prolong the torment. But Tom, bloodied and beaten, rises. The moment is pure cinematic vengeance. With one desperate shot, Tom blows Junior away, ending years of suffering in a single thunderous blast. What makes this duel underrated isn't just its violence, it's the emotional depth beneath it. You feel Tom's rage, his shame, his justice. Fulci's direction adds a horror-like intensity, making every second unbearable in the best way. It's one of the most viscerally satisfying duels you've never heard of, and it demands rediscovery. The Price of Power, Bill versus Pinkerton agent. Set against the backdrop of President Garfield's assassination, The Price of Power blends political conspiracy with classic Western revenge. The final duel between the young gunslinger Bill and a corrupt Pinkerton agent takes place in an empty opera house, a symbolic location where justice, deception, and performance collide. Bill's father was murdered by these same men under the guise of national security. Now, standing beneath flickering chandeliers and velvet curtains, Bill confronts the truth and the man who helped orchestrate it. The Pinkerton agent is calm, smug, and certain of his upper hand. But Bill isn't a boy anymore. He's a force of reckoning. The standoff is long, filled with stillness and unspoken truths. When the guns finally fire, it's almost poetic. The villain collapses beneath a painting of Lady Justice. The duel doesn't just close a personal story, it symbolizes the corruption that infected America's soul during its post-Civil War years. While the film is largely forgotten, this final duel offers one of the most symbolically loaded shootouts in Western history. It's the kind of scene that lingers, not just for its action, but for what it says about power and consequence. These duels may not have topped box offices or adorned posters, but they reshaped what a Western showdown could mean, emotionally, symbolically, and cinematically. Forgotten by many, remembered by few, they deserve their moment in the sun. Like buried bullets in the sand, their stories are just waiting to be unearthed.